represent 235 points. We'll have more coming up. This is Bloomberg Good Morning.
Negotiations on one side, and there is a Lebanese-Israeli negotiation on the other side, which basically is sidelining Hezbollah and the Iranian influence in Lebanon. And this is something I don't think the Iranians, and especially the IRGC, would like to see. And that's why we see them exchanging rockets and fires. And this is basically what the language that Iran and Israel speaks, because they are negotiating, but with rockets this time. And this is what they want to do. They want to project more power and draw the red line. And I don't think this hold of power will last a long time, because Israel wouldn't like this, and Iran would always come back with force because they want to project their power.
And of course, it's not that just Iran, the US, and Israel that are the only players. The region is following this very closely, especially the GCC. There's been a phone call between Qatar's Prime Minister. He received it from the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. What kind of conversations do you think they will be having at this point?
I think it's about having them to continue the negotiations. This is number one, and also to stop escalation in the region, because at the end of the day, what's happening in Lebanon is something jeopardizing the regional security, and this is not something the whole regional countries wants to see. And this is very important. But the problem is when you see the Iranian and Israeli favoring their agendas and their own interests on behalf or on the expense of the regional security and the regional order. This is something I don't think regional countries want to see, especially if we're back in the days, we've seen, like a few days ago, we saw them using Lebanon and the GCC as a bargaining chips by attacking Kuwait and Bahrain on one side by Iran, and still Israel attacking Lebanon. So this is something, if it's not being stopped now, it will continue to expand more and more, or include more regional countries, and this will take us far from a deal.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Of course, as always, it's still not clear where we are with this deal. Abdullah Bandar and Al-Ataybi, thank you for joining us. Right. Well, Pakistani mediators are calling for restraint in the wake of the latest escalation between Iran and Israel. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has posted on social media saying, as we work earnestly and painstakingly together with our brothers and partners to find a peaceful diplomatic solution to the conflict, and especially when the final objective is just about to be achieved, we sincerely urge all sides to exercise restraint and give peace a little more chance. A powerful earthquake in the southern Philippines has killed at least 32 people. Several buildings have collapsed in the magnitude 7.8 tremor, which was centered off the coast of Mindanao. That's the country's second most populous island. The quake triggered tsunami warnings across the region, which were later cancelled. Barnaby Lowe has more for us from Manila.
This is the moment a low-rise commercial building came crashing down as a magnitude 7.8 earthquake struck the Philippines' southernmost region. A popular fast food restaurant in General Santos City was reduced to rubble within seconds. A number of its workers unable to flee in time, prompting rescuers to rush to the scene.
They're out now. The Jollibee employees are all accounted for. The 3 people that got trapped inside were rescued.
Several others.
Leading the gains information technology is the best performing major industry group in the S&P 500. Communication services, right now that's at the bottom of the list. Information technology is followed by energy, is the second best performing major industry group, as we see oil increasing today. Brent crude up 1.3%, WTI right now up 0.9%, 91.36 a barrel.
Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell. We are live streaming on Rumble and YouTube, and also on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. Please help support the work by sharing the links, asking your social media to follow me. If you like the free content that I produce and you would like to help, you can donate on my website through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. It's on the homepage of my website at the very bottom. It's very easy to support the work by donating. You can be a paid member to my Patreon channel and be a paid member to my Substack channel. I also have TikTok, GETTR, X. There's many ways to follow my work. All this content is for free, so please help support the work that I do. In addition, I have great products on my website. I have ebooks, supplements, and also course material on immunology and pulmonology. So let's just briefly go through just a few of the items that I have on my store before we go into the news and the markets. Vitamin C and magnesium is really important for your immune system, your skin health, and also brain function. So I have a great supplement called vitamin C and magnesium. Many people are depleted of magnesium. They're not taking enough of it, especially to improve their brain function. So please go to my store, get the vitamin C and magnesium. You can stack this with the magnesium and zinc supplement that I have to also improve your immune system and your brain function. It's very important, especially post the 2020 crisis, to take more magnesium to improve brain function. Also, getting a good sleep will help slow down the aging process and improve brain function. Good Night formula will do that. It has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower to allow you to detoxify your body, get into those 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep. That'll help to consolidate memory, and you'll be well rested. When you do this regularly, you will slow down the aging process and improve the neural connections that you have. So please go to my store and get the Good Night formula. And if you're 40 years of age or older, vitamin B complex is really important. The first 4 B vitamins helps the electron transport chain for your mitochondria, so you have more energy. You'll be producing more ATP, which is super important for your cells and your tissues. When you have more energy, those cells and tissues will perform better. Vitamin B complex also has the vitamins that you need to rev up your cellular metabolism, so your tissues will perform faster. And vitamin B complex is vitamin B12 to help protect your neurons. So if you're 40 years of age or older, getting the vitamin B complex will increase your energy levels, rev up your metabolism, and protect your neurons. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and a great stack. Vitamin C and magnesium help with the brain function of the immune system in your skin. Good Night formula, so you get a good sleep and you're consolidating memory. And vitamin B complex to rev up your energy levels, increase your cellular metabolism, and protect your neurons. It's a great stack. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's talk about the markets. All right, we're already open in New York. What the big event happened last night was Iran launched missiles at Israel. Israel knocked them down, supposedly, no damage, and then Israel retaliated and hit 3 cities. Supposedly, Iran has stated they're done with their little excursion, and Israel has also said that they were going to de-escalate with Iran. This comes on the heels of this supposedly peace agreement that's supposed to be a memorandum of understanding, is how it's being phrased in the news, where this ceasefire agreement between the United States and Iran should take place Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, as Trump has stated. I personally think that it's all BS. There's no way that the Iranians are going to give up their nuclear material. There's no way that they're going to give up charging tolls in the Strait of Hormuz. And this is another example that Trump thought that he could negotiate himself out of the situation, being overconfident in his negotiating abilities, and we are worse off than before. Before the war, when the United States started hitting Iran, the Strait of Hormuz was one open, and there was no tariff. There was no toll in the strait. Now there's a toll, which is against maritime law, international law. So Trump, because of him thinking that he could negotiate a peaceful solution to this, actually made it worse. Now, right now, oil is stable at 91.42. It went as high as approximately 95 last night for WTI. So Trump needs to understand that he ran the clock out. Congress no longer wants him to continue on, and that he lost the opportunity to actually destroy the IRGC. He needed to use ground troops, at least at a limited level, with the Marines and with airborne, and maybe we've already done it with special forces, to control the strait and push back the IRGC on their mainland so we control that region, and then also Card Island. But Trump didn't do that. And now he ran the clock out, and whatever peace agreement that he does get, we're going to be worse off than when we started. This is very similar to what happened with the tariffs. So Trump's negotiating ability, in his mind, is overstated. And that's being kind. That's being kind to the situation here. Trump failed. Trump has failed this. Now, he's going to spin it like he's a winner. But the thing is that everything he's touched so far since his new administration has been in a state of flux. For example, look at what's happening with the White House. The White House is now bread and circus with this cage fight thing that's going on the lawn that he's setting up. He destroyed the East Wing. I think that we should have a ballroom created, but Congress isn't going to give that to him. So what he's done is just made it into a construction site for the rest of his administration. It's not going to be finished for the rest of his administration because he didn't go through all the hoops that he needed to because he thought he knew better. Tariffs, for example, is still in a state of flux. He had a certain policy, and I do believe that globalization has hurt the American worker, white collar and blue collar. We destroyed our economic clustering by shipping jobs overseas, and we need to bring them back. He did a tariff policy to try to bring those companies back to the United States. Some of them are coming back, which is a good policy. But the thing is, we have more expensive goods permanently. The longer this Strait of Hormuz is closed and oil is elevated, we'll permanently bake in a higher inflation rate. Then he brings in Walsh into the Federal Reserve as chairman, and Walsh is pushing for a potentially a 3% inflation target instead of a 2% inflation target. So if the target is 2.7, I'm sorry, not the target, but let's say data is coming in at 2.7 for inflation, they'll say, well, it's below the target, the 3. But yet right now it's at 2. So if it's at 2.7 or 2.8, the Federal Reserve might say, you know what, instead of lowering rates, we may want to stay steady or maybe raise rates. But if you raise the bar to a higher inflation rate, you're permanently programming in goods and services to be more expensive. So the little person is going to actually see a faster erosion of their purchasing power. Now, the well-heeled or the upslope of the K economy, they'll be doing fine. But the downslope of the K economy won't be doing fine. The not so well-heeled, and that's what a 3% target means. So not only has he baked in inflation because of higher oil prices. He baked in inflation because of tariffs. And now he's going to bake in more inflation because of a 3% target at the Federal Reserve. The little person isn't going to be able to survive this. And you wonder why it costs so much for goods and services. This is the reason why. Trump has failed. Trump has failed. And you know, the thing is, I voted for him. I voted for him 3 times. I'm glad he's president. It's way better than Harris. But the thing is that people like myself that are conservative, that are Republican, need to call off on where Trump is failing. And he's failing on this. He's failing on inflation. He's failed on being able to destroy the IRGC. See, there are some Republicans out there that say, oh, don't go into the war. Well, I'm not an American pacifist. I'm America first, but not America pacifist. I'm an America first expansionist. All right? There's a big difference there. And I personally believe that the IRGC needs to be destroyed. And that the nuclear material that they have must be in our possession, not some other regime, not some other country. It must be in our possession, the United States. And if they're not willing to give it up, then we take it. And that means blowing them up. That means destroying Tehran. It doesn't matter to me. But they cannot have a nuclear weapon. They cannot have that nuclear material at such a high enrichment grade. That Trump failed. He kept on eating the clock, thinking that he was going to be able to negotiate because he's a master negotiator in his mind. But the bottom line is he ate up the clock. And now Congress is pushing back because he's stupid. Because Trump is stupid. So now he has someone in the Federal Reserve that's going to push for a 3% target for inflation. And so that means that it's in their mind okay to run hot. So if it's at 3.1, they're not going to do anything because it's close to the target. But if you look at it from a 2.0 target, it's way too hot and they need to raise rates. So what they programmed into the decision making at the Federal Reserve is more inflation. Thanks, Trump. Thanks, Trump. That's not going to help the average worker. It'll help the person that has a lot of money in the stock market because hot money flows. If you look at the correlation, the more money that the Federal Reserve prints up to a certain level, the higher stock price goes. But the other side of the coin is that the purchasing power of your income starts to go down. All right, the S&P 500 is at 7,447. VIX is at 18. If you've been paying attention the last 2 weeks when I have published the update for the market, where I go through the charts, I usually publish it on a Sunday. I didn't publish last Sunday, but if you look at the last 2 Sundays that I've done, you'll notice that I've been predicting that the VIX is going to spike above 20. All right, it almost happened because of the event that we had last night. But things stabilized throughout the trading in Europe and the morning session today. But I still am looking for that VIX spike. When that VIX spike does happen, there's going to be a little bit of a sell-off in equities, and it may be a time to buy equities for the S&P 500. But VIX right now is trading at 18. Euro is trading at 1.15, so the dollar is a little bit stronger. That's probably because of the news. And the yen has been weakening, dollar strengthening, and yen's trading at 160.112. Bitcoin has been going down lately, 63,000. Oil stabilized right now at 91.87. Now, I've been saying on the charts that I've been telling people about, pay attention to the trading range between roughly around $87, $88 as the low bound, and around around 94 to 95 for the high range. So around 88 to 95 or 87 to 94 range for oil at this moment in time. All right. So we're close to 92. So we're a little bit at the high end. So oil might drift down a little bit in this range as long as we have a movement towards a ceasefire. But the chances of Iran giving up their nuclear material is like nil. So is this just a memorandum of understanding, which means in business parlance, bullshit? It's Trump is failing heavily on what's going on with Iran. Now, natural gas is trading at 3.122. Fair value, because we're moving into the summer season. People are going to be using their air conditioners if it's hotter in some regions. I think in the United States it will be hotter this year because of the El Nino effect. And the AI using more energy. So we may stay above 3 or hit around 2.9 for natural gas futures. So I think the low bound is approximately 3, and it may go all the way up to 3.3 or 3.4. So you might see a trading range between 3 and 3.4. We're right now at 3.12. It is going down. There also is a negative correlation between natural gas futures and oil. But it doesn't stay with a negative correlation all the time. But on average, if you look at like a 20-day average, natural gas will go down and oil will go up. If oil goes down, then natural gas will go up. So, there's a little bit of a correlation, but it can break down. Sometimes they are positively correlated. But there's a little bit of a dynamic there that can be played. So with that, that's the updates of the market. We're going to go to the news and critique it. But thank you for joining. Please help support the work that I do by making sure that you go to my store and get the great products that I offer. It'll help to slow down the aging process. And if you pay attention to what I've been saying about the markets, you'll be able to make some money.
Individual leaders, Intel up 10%, also the most active. Google tapping Intel to make a bunch of its TPUs. We have Micron Technology, their shares up 8.6%. NVIDIA, also among the most active, up 1.2%. And Information Technology, the best performing major industry group right now in the S&P 500. This is a little off the radar. Tango Therapeutics jumping after the results of a study showed a combination of its drug and a Revolution medicine shrunk tumors in advanced pancreatic cancer patients. The shares of the ticker symbol TNGX up over 32%. Meantime, yields remain elevated as oil suggests a higher rate of inflation. And Colin Martin of Charles Schwab says the new Fed chair, well, he's going to have to give up on the idea of an interest rate cut.
And I think if this was 2 months ago, maybe Warsh would try to influence the committee to lower rates, but that ship has sailed. There's going to be no support for that. We think they hold steady.
There's no way they have to hold steady because the baking of inflation because of the Strait of Hormuz issue is a major problem. There is no way that the Federal Reserve is going to cut rates anytime soon. We need to see oil trading below like $85 a barrel before we can even entertain that. Because if this was a short-term excursion, in just weeks, not months, with the war in Iran, we wouldn't have had a problem. But because Trump thought he could negotiate and not use full kinetic force to get the nuclear material, now we have permanent inflation baked into the economy. Not only that, with the Strait of Hormuz somewhat clogged, guess what? That cycle of fertilizer that needs to go onto crops to increase the yields may not be there. So we may actually have food shortage because of this bullshit with Trump.
Electrifies the crowds. I think that's what he's saying to himself.
So I wasn't going to say
Are you
that.
suggesting self-awareness?
No, I'm just saying it's just like all the security apparatus that has to follow you around as the president of the United States. Okay.
There's something in it.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
You know, please post your comments online. Give us a call here.
I think that's safe to say.
All right, we're going to go and play a clip about SpaceX IPO. You got to be careful. I think SpaceX long term will be a very profitable company because they're going to be tied to defense. They're going to be tied to communications. They may even bankrupt AT&T and Verizon if they really want to, you know, with their Starlink. There's going to be, I think, large contracts with defense. You have this idea of building building AI up in space, you know, with the servers and have it communicate out in space, which I think is a great idea. So there's a lot of potential, but you have to be careful that there's going to be a lot of inflow at the very beginning, and then all of a sudden that inflow, because you have in private investors, retail investors, institutional investors all buying in at the same time, and then index funds having to buy in because they're going to have it on their index. Then all of a sudden, once all that buying stops, it's going to start to drift down. And don't be surprised that it drifts down 25% or 30%. Now, when it does, that's the time to buy. Not now. If you want to be smart, wait until the SpaceX drop after the IPO. I suspect that it's going to drop 25% or more, and then go in. Now let's listen into this investor about
all things
SpaceX.
markets is Steve Eisman. He is the host of the Real Eisman Playbook podcast. And Steve, thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Why don't we talk first about the SpaceX IPO? We're anticipating it's going to be here later this week.
Sure.
Even come Friday.
I'm not a fan.
Why? Explain.
Let's see. You know, if you read the prospectus, I mean, there's some amusing stuff in the prospectus. Like, my favorite part of the prospectus is that one of the things that SpaceX wants to do is asteroid mining. I thought that was kind of funny. It's there's some asteroid mining going on in this sci-fi show on Apple called For All Mankind. It's a central theme, but I think the probability of asteroid mining happening anytime soon is pretty low. But I think what is probably most important in the prospectus is how capital intensive SpaceX has become. So if you go back to fiscal year 2023, and you compare revenue to CapEx was only 42% of revenue. And in the most recent first quarter, it was 215% of revenue. And that's because back in fiscal year 2023, SpaceX was not in AI.
Mm-hmm.
It was just in Starlink and
It's not
space.
that's so hard. It's the AI.
It's the AI that is incredibly capital intensive. And Grok, with all due respect to Elon Musk, is not a world-class AI company. And, you know, I don't think anybody speaks of Grok as at the leading edge.
No, but the compute power that they are building has even players like Anthropic.
No, I understand that, but what you're talking about is an unbelievably capital-intensive business.
So
That's
not
gonna
like
need-
a
that's
software
gonna need-
company.
It's not like a software company. It's so capital. I think the most important news last week was the fact that Google was raising $80 billion.
Right.
And
even though it's got a ton of cash flow.
But if you're going to spend when it spent $90 billion last year, it could handle it from its own cash flow. When it's spending $180 billion, it's got to raise capital, and not just capital, stock. And you know, there were rumors that Meta is going to raise capital, Microsoft is going to raise capital. The whole tech sector is being transformed because it's so
from an asset-light
business to an asset-intense business.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would just point out is, despite the incredible sums of money that are being spent, what's being produced in terms of LLMs and agentic AI, which is great, is not really differentiatable. There's not that much difference
So you
between
think it's
ChatGPT.
commoditized
It's
business?
very commoditized. People are switching constantly from one to the other. There are no moats. So for all the money that's being spent, what's being created, it seems to me at this point, is a commodity.
So why do you think Berkshire Hathaway stepped in and took $10 billion of that Google?
I have no idea. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, look, Google, there's a lot of other reasons to own Google other than AI, but there's no question in my mind that the business has become capital intensive, no moats. And the other thing that's happening behind the scenes is that until now, companies have been charging for
Let me just
tokens.
interject. I personally believe that AI build out infrastructure is very reminiscent of the railroad build out in the 1800s. They spent a lot of money to build it out, thought that they were going to be able to control it in terms of, you know, high ticket prices and all this, and being able to command a high price for moving goods across the nation. There was a feverish pitch of activity, of building out the railroads, and then there were trusts that were made and all this exotic financing that led to eventually a crash. We need to spend this money to actually build out the infrastructure. But I think some of these companies are going to kind of fall to the wayside. They're not going to go belly up. They're very strong companies before the AI. But just look at Oracle. Oracle, extremely strong company in terms of cash flow. And they're starting to have a problem because they've been financing this build out of these servers. You may see some of these companies, the Oracles, the NVIDIAs, the Googles, Microsoft, all these people that are spending lots of money on this, they may be hurt because there's not a ROI to it, a strong ROI. Like, how do you really monetize this? Think about the internet, for example. The internet took off because it was free. Once broadband happened, once you had fiber optic cable coming into the home and you had these high-speed modems and you didn't have to do dial-up and you could go to any website and there was no moat. I mean, in the early days of the internet, there were moats like AOL. AOL was trying to consolidate the internet in a way, and people that didn't know any better thought that the internet was AOL. Well, no, the internet was way larger than AOL. Once broadband happened and cable just charged you for the service, the internet took off for the average person. Once AI tokenization becomes a commodity, once it becomes much cheaper, then it's going to take off. But if you have lots of charges to your company, or even personally because you're using tokens, people are going to say, I don't want this variable cost. Then you're going to shed it. They've been shedding subscriptions. Why won't they shed the tokenization of AI at the personal level? And companies are going to start looking at it. When they have a large organization that's using all these tokens, they're seeing a larger bill relative to the budget that they had assigned. Now, maybe the budget they assigned for the tokenization was erroneous, but they have a problem because they're over budget. And this is part of the reason why they're laying people off. This is part of the reason why they're not hiring, because corporations didn't realize that they needed so many tokens. So in essence, what AI is, get rid of your employee, make your employee figure out how to improve their processes. Get rid of your employee that you may be spending $100,000 on. And through tokenization, you'll be spending, every time you are using the AI, maybe 30 grand in tokenization. or 40 grand in tokenization. And therefore you have a 60 grand savings. That's what they're pushing here. Now people may push back and say that's ridiculous. Also, there's a term that AI is, there's a broadening but not a depth into the organization. So it's very superficial in terms of activity that's actually being used to improve processes. Very similar to scripts or macros in Excel at that level, but you can use it not just in Excel, but you're building basically scripts and macros for other processes. That's all that is, but you're paying for it through the tokenization. You build a script in Microsoft, right? And or a macro, that's just the employee using it and not creating a variable cost through tokenization. So there may be some pushback here with tokenization.
Cost of tokens. And that's actually starting to change. Microsoft's GitHub is now charging actually for the tokens. And if you go on the Reddit board, you're seeing that there's a lot of pushback. So it's going to be
very, whether the business can survive.
But
the internet survived because it was basically free. To get on, you had to have a provider, you needed a broadband connection, or now 5G, but you had to pay to a provider to get on the internet. That's kind of like the toll. But then you can do anything you want. Now, if you want a website, then you have to pay for hosting the website and all this stuff, right? But when you are eroding someone's budget, personal budget or corporate budget, to query AI, to build something, to make a PowerPoint or whatever, people are going to push back and say they're not going to use it. If you had to pay for ChatGPT, would you use it? No. What about Grok? No, you wouldn't do with that either. There's the problem. It has to be free. And when it's free, then a big economy will be built off of it. And there'll be positive externalities off of this free usage, just like to Google back in the olden days, or to use Yahoo and just to search, web search, it was free. It wasn't a variable cost. You just had to have a connection to the internet. That's what we need with AI. And we're way too far away from this. All these companies that were building out, the hyperscalers, assumed that they were going to make you an annuity for their company by using AI. That's the business model.
Right, maybe I should say.
it's going to be very interesting to see how heavily people are going to be using AI once they get actually charged for the actual cost of the tokens.
Andrew's got a question too. Andrew?
Hey, Steve, I don't disagree with you that right now XAI is behind in terms of relative to these other LLMs, or even the possibility that they all become commoditized. What I don't understand, though, or I don't understand about your take on all this is, to some degree, SpaceX right now, in terms of getting things into orbit, getting to space, is a monopoly. It's a monopoly power that ultimately will be able to charge, at least for some period of time, monopoly rents. I don't know what kind of multiple you put on monopoly rents, but when you think about the prospect of, and even if they don't have monopoly unto itself, the idea that they may be 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead of others once others even get into the same competitive zone, whether it turns out to be, I think, your expectation is not going to be a good investment. That's the part that I'm trying to understand. I found that it's never been a great bet to bet against Elon.
I'll grant you all that, but if you look at
and then he seems to find new ways he finds new ways constantly to make money, whether it's the Google deal or the Anthropic deal. He may ultimately buy Tesla, put Tesla inside the thing. maybe that'll, I mean, I don't know.
Well, let me address it. If you, again, look at the S1, the TAM, the total addressable market, is defined at 28.5 trillion. 85% of that TAM is an AI. So even if everything you say about SpaceX and Starlink is true, the entire company is being bet on AI in terms of its future, not on space and not on Starlink. Those are his words, not mine.
Do you expect him to buy Tesla? I'm expecting that he's going to use the stock price, perhaps, of SpaceX to buy Tesla and create sort of one giant company called X.
I wouldn't doubt it. I think if I was a shareholder of SpaceX, that'd be the last thing in the world I'd want him to do. But I'm sure he's going to do it. I mean, if you look at Tesla, the earnings have gone straight down for the last 4 years. Every single year that they have gone down. The EV business is just not that great a business.
Right.
It's also a capital-intensive business.
Right.
It's highly competitive.
And not only that, people, first of all, the cars aren't robust. Your battery isn't robust. It takes a long time to charge it. How long will the powertrain last? The battery pack last? Can you really have a Tesla for 10 years? No. And what about when you have to replace it? Costs a fortune. You might as well just blow up the car, which some people have done on the internet. So why would you want an EV? 100% EV. What makes sense is a hybrid. But these, and not only that, what about this concept when they go autonomous with vehicles? What about this concept of man versus machine, man in control of machine? When you have autonomous vehicles, now the machine is controlling man. So there's a philosophical problem here. Now, I'm against EVs. I just think cars are too expensive now. It's too heavily gadget upgraded. You need to downgrade the gadgets, go to simplicity with cars, and bring down the price. When a vehicle costs $100,000 and the medium home price is $350,000 or $400,000 for just rounding in the United States. Now, some regions it's a little bit less. Other regions it's a little bit more. But let's just say roughly $400,000 median. A quarter of a home price is buying a car that's going to last you maybe 6 years. It doesn't make any sense. There's something radically wrong here. Cars are too expensive. They're too teched out. They need to go back to something that's more robust, that you can have for a long time, so you can spread the costs over more years. And people will have more money to spend on other things. So your cars are more expensive. Think about this. We step back and look at this philosophically. Your cars are more expensive, approximately 25% if you're going to buy it, 25% of your house. And you're going to have to pay for tokens every time you Google or every time you use your AI, Gemini or Grok or whatever. See what's happening? What did the World Economic Forum say? You're going to own nothing and you're going to love it. No, what's happening, that's code for turning you into an annuity. You are paying, you're becoming an annuity for some other corporation or corporations. And you won't have anything, you will have no net assets. You're just a paying unit. It's a problem.
Produces EVs much cheaper than Tesla does. If I was a SpaceX shareholder, the last thing I'd want would be very good value.
Yeah, there have been people who said the way to get into SpaceX, if you can't get a hold of the shares,
It's to buy Tesla. Yeah,
right?
I wouldn't doubt that he buys it, but like I said, that's not something I would want him to do.
Your bigger concern is that there's a lot of good news here, but you think it's already all been baked in to expectations at this point?
Oh, it's more than baked in. I mean, the 28.5 trillion TAM is almost as big as the entire GDP of the United States of America.
Right.
I mean, what I love about the S1 is it reads like a science fiction novel. It really does.
People who have bet against Elon Musk in the past have gotten burned if they've shorted him. Is this a...
I have no interest in shorting this. I just not play.
Yeah.
It's just not something that I think the valuation is silly, and you know, people want to play, go play. But you know, you're talking about something that's pure momentum, but I don't see the valuation at all.
When you look at those early DSP designs,
all right,
how do you see some of those principles and how they've evolved?
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the barley. I have two types of barley. You can get the heirloom barley or the gladiator barley. These are micronutrient compounds that's going to help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. It's going to help your immune system. It's going to help your endocrine system. It'll help with keeping inflammation down and help with your cardiovascular system, brain function, even your joint health. By bringing down inflammation in those three different systems, guess what? They're healthier. When you have chronic inflammation, it causes damage. You want to bring that down. So get the heirloom barley. Take it every day. This is a month's supply. Now, the gladiator barley is very similar to the heirloom barley, but it has one added benefit. It helps to build muscle. So if you want to build some muscle and reduce atrophy, get the gladiator barley, but you will also be detoxifying your body, soaking up free radicals, bringing down inflammation. And you'll also notice that you're recovering quicker after a workout. Now, I also have Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost is a very comprehensive compound profile. It has many ingredients, 68 nutrients. And what this will do is help with your cardiovascular health, build musculature, help with your immune system, your endocrine system, help with your brain function, rev up your cellular metabolism. You'll have a steady burn of energy. You'll have more vitality. You'll feel the effects of this within 72 hours. You'll want to be more active. In addition, you'll be sleeping better. And when all of these systems are performing better, you're slowing down the aging process over time. So please go to my store, get the Boomer Boost. And you can stack it with either the heirloom barley or the gladiator barley. And it's a great way to control your A1C levels. So you're controlling diabetes. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5, all caps, discount 5. You get $5 off any order. You can use it as many times as you want. Get the Boomer Boost, the gladiator barley, and the heirloom barley. Another great supplement to help build muscle is Cottrell. When you turn 40 years of age, on average, individuals will be methylating their genes in such a way where your epigenetic profile has silenced some of your gene expression to build muscle and maintain muscle. Cottrell will help with the gene expression to build muscle and to maintain it. So that means that you will have more musculature and less atrophy. Now, by building more muscle, you're also improving brain function. How? That doesn't make any sense, Dr. Paul. It's very simple. By building up muscle, you're building up myokines. And when you have a higher concentration of myokines, it's neuroprotective.
I found some web results. I can show them if you ask again from your iPhone.
You will have higher levels of myokines. And when you have higher levels of myokines, it's neuroprotective. In addition, by building up muscle, you're improving your BDNF concentrations, which is also neuroprotective. So by having more musculature, you're actually improving brain function. But also when you're improving your musculature, especially in your legs and your calves. You're getting better blood flow return, venous return flow back to your heart. So you're actually improving your cardiovascular system too by having more musculature. So you don't have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, but you do need to be cognizant that loss of muscle mass as you get older, when you start to atrophy, is affecting your brain and your cardiovascular health, on top of your skeletal system and your musculature. So it's really important to build muscle. You don't have to be a bodybuilder, but working out 3 times a week with some weights and taking the supplements that will help you to build muscle is very important. Now, Myotrol has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to build muscle. It helps with the gene expression. Myotrol will also improve the health of your mitochondria, so you have the ATP to maintain that muscle. You can stack the Myotrol with the Boomer Boost and stack the Myotrol with the Gladiator Barley. Now, if you're an athlete, younger or older, you will benefit from this protocol by taking the Myotrol, the Gladiator Barley, and the Boomer Boost together. But I've been saying for many years, you can learn from sports medicine and geriatric medicine how to slow down the aging process. So by taking the Myotrol, the Boomer Boost, and the Gladiator Barley together and doing some resistance training, even if you're not an athlete, you will benefit and slow down the aging process. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5, get the Myotrol, get the barley, get the Boomer Boost. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now, this is what I do. It works. I've been doing this for a very long time. It behooves you to pay attention. It also behooves you to pay attention to things that I say about the market, because you'll be able to make money on it. All right, let's listen into Al Jazeera right now.
Urged Israel to halt any more shooting, given the fact that it was a concern that the negotiations between the U.S. and Iran would be jeopardized. And reportedly, the Israeli prime minister pushed back on the suggestion, but only pseudo-agreed. Now, what we do know is that the U.S. president in the last 48 hours has been working very hard to try and suggest that he has this situation, which is escalating, under control. In an interview, he said that he calls the shots, not the Israeli prime minister. And the U.S. president also suggesting that when it comes to accepting an Iran deal, that it's Donald Trump that will decide on the terms and what is being accepted. And when it comes to Israel, he will have to accept it, the U.S. president says. In other words, Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't have a choice, is what Donald Trump said. Now, the bottom line in all of this is that the U.S. president is trying to do a couple of things with his messaging. The first thing is he is trying to show that he has control and also that he is essentially pushing for calm. But the reality is, when this is a very unpopular war in the United States and Americans see this escalating, not only do financial markets get nervous, but so does the American public, which is increasingly pushing back on this conflict. The latest poll showing that the number of people in support of this conflict is dwindling.
Kimberly Halkett, White House correspondent, joining us there. Thank you. Despite all this, Israel's military has launched a wave of attacks on southern Lebanon. The strikes targeted the cities of Sidon and Tyre and areas in Nabatea. Lebanese state media says at least 5 people have been killed. 2 emergency workers from Red Cross have been injured. And Hezbollah is saying it's used drones to target Israeli army vehicles and troops in the south. Let's bring in Obaida Hito now, who joins us live from Tyre, as we said, in southern Lebanon. Obaida, has there been any easing on those strikes on Lebanon in the last hour or so?
Absolutely no easing. I want to take your attention directly over to the town of Mansouri, just a fresh Israeli airstrike as we're coming to air right now, and this gives you an idea of how the situation has been throughout the day here in southern Lebanon. Since the announcement of Iran saying that they weren't going to carry out any more strikes on Israel, and in exchange Israel saying that they would not be targeting Beirut as long as the northern communities would not be targeted. Israel has carried out several airstrikes here around the city of Tyre. This is the latest one there at the top of the town of Mansouri. A couple hours ago, there were 2 other strikes inside the city in a neighborhood called Burj Shamali as well as Mashouk. That was followed by a very close-by attack on a vehicle in the roundabout there by the clock tower. The vehicle was moving through the roundabout. It's only about 100 meters away from the Red Cross headquarters here in the city of Tyre. There is confirmation that at least 1 person was killed in that attack, others injured. This gives you an idea about how volatile the situation remains here in the south. Hezbollah hasn't claimed any cross-border attacks today. They have claimed to have targeted Israeli troops inside Lebanese territory on various front lines in the Bint Jbeil area, as well as around the city of Nabatia, where Israel has recently expanded its ground operations, taking the Beaufort Castle and the high ridgeline there that overlooks Majayun and other parts of southern Lebanon. So there's no sign of a ceasefire here in the south, but for now, Hezbollah is refraining from launching rockets and attacks across the blue line, but Israel says they're going to continue to strike what they say are legitimate targets here in southern Lebanon.
All right, Abeda Hito joining us live from Tyre in Lebanon. Thank you. Well, as efforts continue to reach a new agreement, significant differences remain between Iran and the US. Here are the main demands of each side. Iran's primary objectives include the immediate lifting of US sanctions and the release of billions of dollars in frozen assets held abroad. US President Donald Trump says those funds will only be released once a deal is reached. Washington's conditions focus on Iran's nuclear program and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Israel opposes the negotiations and is demanding Iran dismantle its nuclear program and stop enriching uranium. Joining me in the studio now is Abdullah Bandar Al-Taibi, an assistant professor in international affairs at Cottrell University.
All right, what we're going to do is we're going to pivot over to Cash Jordan because we need to know why New York is going to hell in a handbasket because of Commodore Napoleon the Pig, aka Madani. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. Not the digestive enzyme complex, the probiotics. I'm talking about the probiotics right now. So the probiotics, you can get the VeggieCap version or the powdered version for the probiotics. That's the powdered version, and this is the VeggieCap version. Now, with a good probiotic, you're going to be able to improve your gut biome. You're going to bring down inflammation. You're going to improve your immune system at the gut level. You're going to be able to digest food better. You're producing a thicker mucosal lining. Your IgA titer levels will be higher, and you're going to be reducing leaky gut syndrome. By having a good gut biome, you're also going to reduce allergies. Getting allergies, part of the reason why people get allergies is because of a thin mucosal lining because of the crappy food they eat. So stay away from processed foods, drink filtered water, and take a good probiotic. Really important. It's a great foundation, and there's added benefit. Your metabolism will improve, your skin will improve, your brain function will improve, because with a good gut biome, what will happen is you're going to be able to sleep better at night. You're going to be able to get into those 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. You're going to be detoxifying your central nervous system and consolidating memory. So good gut health is very important for overall health in your body. So please go to my store and get the VeggieCap version or the powdered version of the probiotic. Now, I prefer the powdered version of the probiotic because I take all these different powders like the collagen and the lignans and the Boomer Boost, the Gladiator Barley. So it's just easier for me. But some people prefer the VeggieCat version. So please go to my store, get the very high quality probiotics that I offer. It's the foundation of slowing down the aging process. Then there are 4 pillars on top of that. You can get the Max 35 or Cleanse to improve your innate immune system. C60 is the second pillar to soak up free radicals. The third pillar, the turmeric ashwagandha lignans. And the fourth pillar, Boomer Boost, to rev up your energy levels and your cellular metabolism. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, and you get $5 off. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, let's listen in to Cash Jordan.
This digital calendar lightening my mental load makes it worth every penny. I wasn't fully convinced the Skylight calendar would be able to do it until I finally got one.
We want Governor Hochul to remove Mayor Mamdani because he has been absolutely negligent in the equal application of the law in the city.
So, voters in New York City are very upset with the mayor who's on a communist crusade with new schemes to confiscate buildings across New York City while allowing mobs to run rampant on our streets, which will soon be full of free grocery stores and free apartments, apparently. But the problem is all of that is going to require a lot more money from the people who just demanded the mayor's resignation.
What was your reaction to his proposal earlier this week about seizing negligent properties? At first, I thought it was a joke when someone shared it with me. I didn't think it was real. You know, his plan is to see if New York City can handle this business better than we can.
Organizers say the mayor has failed to address, quote, rising radicalization and anti-American extremism in the city. They want him out of office.
It's a roller coaster of things. When I say weaponize the building department, what by that I mean is strapping the building department private ownership with so many fines that they're going to be so deep, and they're going to determine exactly what the fines are and how high they're going to go.
Basically, it's the socialism of private property. That's what's going on, right? So that's what communists do, right? If you have to do improvements on apartments, following all the regulations, and then be capped on how much rent you can charge those tenants, the tenants lose. Just what.
I think there were a lot of people that knew and thought that this was what he's going to do, and he's doing it. And I think you all should be very concerned about that New Yorkers put him, knowing what he was, into office.
So when you have a mayor who's more interested in the eternal campaign than actually fixing things, you know New York's going to change real quick. And what nobody's talking about is right now we're seeing this fascinating mix of state-sponsored agitation, if you want to call it that, and then a full communist press on the local economy at the exact same time. And that's not a coincidence. Because if your goal is to transform a place as quickly as possible, you've got to shut down all social opposition, which is what all of these riots and protests are supposed to do. Well, at the exact same time, you can eliminate private property through new schemes like increased enforcement designed to confiscate buildings from apartment owners that aren't allowed to make money with them to begin with, all in the hopes of achieving either the socialist utopia communists always dream of or the disaster that is a country like Cuba. And every time in history we've tried this, we've always ended up with Cuba, sadly. We've never gotten the dream. But you see, communism, it always fails because of somebody else's fault or because we didn't have enough communism. And this is something our mayor proudly believes in. And his philosophy explains why local businesses are finding it so challenging to work with the mayor as the city now looks to be on a path straight out of a socialist regime playbook intent on total control and transformation. Which brings us to the real reason people are protesting right now. They're losing their private property and they're losing the society around them that enabled them to get it, which is just disintegrating, and it's frightening. But the justification for these new land grabs and the free grocery stores is that rents in New York are so high, nobody can afford to live here, and our stores are so expensive, we need the help of a socialist to punish people who can't afford groceries, even though people living in America already qualify for nutrition assistance at the federal level. But while many people watching this are likely in the camp that New York has already passed the point of no return, the people out on the streets of the city haven't given up yet. So here we have a mass rally, a protest in front of Mayor Mamdani's residence, where the mayor gets to live while he's in office, and they're out there waving American flags on the streets of New York. Something that doesn't happen here all the time. But the reason they're protesting is because the mayor's made it pretty clear he's not going anywhere. And he doesn't even want their votes. He got elected without the support of the people who are out there on the streets demanding that he resign, which is why, as you're about to see, he's still coming for their homes and everything inside them.
Through our new citywide campaign, Fix the City, we will focus on the worst landlords in New York City. When necessary, we will take aggressive legal action to remove negligent owners.
This sounds okay on the surface. New York is in a housing crisis, rents are very expensive, and it doesn't really make sense that there should be buildings out there that are so deplorable nobody can live in them until you understand why. That in a market full of $5,000 plus apartments, there are others that don't turn a profit. Why? Because their rents are capped by the city. These are apartments that don't cost $5,000 a month. Some of them just cost $500 a month, but they can't be repaired, can't be fixed up, because the cost of doing that would mean the owner never sees a return on the money. If the rent's got to be $500 and you get an increase of $2 after you repair one of these places, you'll never be able to. And those are the landlords that are being targeted by this new scheme to confiscate buildings. And as you're about to see, this includes almost half the apartments in New York.
When necessary, we will take aggressive legal action to remove negligent owners and property managers. And for buildings that have suffered chronic neglect, we will work to transfer ownership to responsible stewards. Stewards that include community land trusts, nonprofits.
They're using nonprofits and community land trusts as state ownership. It's communism. And all of these kids that voted for Mamdani getting their education at Ivy League or Ivy League Plus and want to live in New York, they all voted for this crap because they think communism is great. This is an erosion of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment is really simple: life, liberty, and property. He is antithetical. Mamdani is antithetical to the Enlightenment. He is part of this postmodern philosophy that anything goes. You could just take it. Well, no, it's not anything goes. The foundation of our constitutional republic is based on the Enlightenment.
(2026), the year we're learning about fraud in places like Minnesota and Los Angeles. Now New York wants to get in on the game, giving buildings that used to be privately owned to groups funded by the local government. But it gets even worse because it's not just the landlord that's going to lose their property. It's also the property manager who's going to be out of a job, who had a contract to look after the place and do their best with the limited income it generates to keep it fine and violation free and help it pass inspections and go to court when it's time to fight unfair violations. The mayor's going to cancel those contracts and put those people out of a job to just rewire the entire housing market in this city overnight. And this plan is so radical and so extreme. People who own property here and were told about it thought there's no way this can be true, but it is. Watch this.
And you know, small property owners are frankly surprised and frustrated by Mamdani's plan. The Bonanos bought this building back in the 1980s. They continue to do renovations. Painters were in here this morning, even though they're told by the city how much they can charge in rent. Wow. I want to bring in Natalia. Let's start first with the mayor's announcement. What was your reaction to his proposal earlier this week about seizing negligent properties?
At first, I thought it was a joke when someone shared it with me. I didn't think it was real. And then I had to do more research to find out, in fact, his plan is to see if New York City can handle this business better than we can.
So speaking of that, you guys are doing a renovation in this unit. How much does a renovation for something like this cost? And then the government comparison is the New York City Housing Authority. How much do their renovations cost?
So doing the bare minimum here to just make the space livable, we're spending about $30,000, and NYCHA, reported that it cost them over $400,000 to renovate a single one-bedroom apartment.
What is affordable about that? This is all being done in the name of getting people homes that are up to code and that people can live in and that aren't deplorable. And here you have a place that's being renovated, and if the private landlord does it, it costs over 10 times less than if the city does it. How is that a good thing for New York? How does that do what the mayor keeps telling everybody he wants to do, which is to create a city that everyone can afford to live in? If we're going to take buildings away from people and jack up the cost to fix them up over 10 times and then move somebody else in, how is that affordable? It's not, but that's the reason that these properties are under attack, even though private landlords are doing things way better. And there's a reason for this. And you've got to understand that to communists, your money, your personal property, your personal business, your personal wealth that might provide for you or provide for others or create jobs for people or save people money, all of that exists in opposition to an all-encompassing government that wants to run everything. These two things cannot exist at the same time. They are in direct competition with each other. You see, because in order for communism to be fully implemented, it has to have zero competitors. There can't be this other apparatus out there that provides for people. No, that's the government's job. It's wrong. If this happens over here, because somebody might earn money, somebody might save money, people might empower themselves, which takes them away from communism. You see, that's the issue, and that's why these properties have got to go.
Let's go over this block by block thing and what does it exactly mean. This is going to weaponize the building department here in New York. They're going to start to strap our landlords with ridiculous rents, fines, and then from that point on, it's going to build this whole, it's a roller coaster of things.
Wow.
We have C. Weaver, who is going to be activated, and she is going to go into this whole tenants rights thing.
Wow.
They're going to, when I say weaponize the building department, what by that I mean is strapping the building department in private ownership with so many fines that they're going to be so deep, and they're going to determine the city itself. They're going to determine exactly what the fines are and how high they're going to go.
How is that fair? How can you own a building in an environment where the local government says, we're coming for you, and we're going to use our enforcement mechanisms to make sure that you're obeying the law, and we're going to increase those enforcement mechanisms. We're going to just decide what they need to go up to, and if you own a building that is regulated by the city, those are the buildings that aren't making money. Those are the buildings where violations are most likely to be found. Why? Because there's nobody around to fix them. Corners have to be cut. People have to defer certain things, and now we're going to increase the fines on these places. While the cost to renovate them also increases, and the rent has to stay the same. Regulated, government-watched apartments that aren't allowed to earn any money, that's a recipe for something going bankrupt. And that's the whole plan here. That way it can be taken away and given to one of these nonprofits who I'm sure are very excited to come in and start charging 10 times more money to renovate these spaces when they're going to get all that money from the city to do it. They can't wait for this plan. Of course they're coming out and saying that it's affordable. And we should have known all of this was going to happen, because the very rent control mechanism that was supposed to make New York City more affordable, it was supposed to take greed and profit out of the apartment game and make it so everybody could afford to live here. It's actually been the worst thing for people who get stuck with these buildings, because nothing ever gets repaired, and they're living in the worst conditions in America that you could possibly imagine sometimes. Little apartments that are just falling apart. Watch this.
And then real quick, the big thing is buildings and neglect. You guys actually did renovate the entire building, but then the city left you high and dry. Run me through that process. Yes, so we had pre-approval for a major capital improvement that cost us over $200,000. And in return, we would get a $14 per room per month increase in rent. And when it was all done in 2021, the city said actually we're only going to approve $1.96 per month increase.
Whoa!
Okay.
So the way these buildings work is if you want to fix them up, you've got to get approval to go into one of these places that are just falling apart and get the city's permission. You've got to tell them how much it's going to cost to fix the building, and the city will tell you what you can earn back, because in order for money to exist to fix something, the opportunity to earn that money back has to also exist, but it's the city that's making this determination. And this woman here on Fox apparently had a plan that was approved by the city, went to them and said, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to spend all this money. And the city said, okay, go ahead, you're going to get $14 every time you do a room like the one I'm in right now. And then they brought it down to less than $2 a room. They just changed the game after the money gets spent. I mean, that's a hostile system right there. That is a system that is designed to destroy wealth, is designed to destroy property, and is designed to just take people out. And it looks like this is all being done on purpose and is now about to get even worse.
This is going to be an absolute disaster for us.
Wow.
Absolute
The
disaster.
New York Post agrees, Vicky. They read about Mandati's plan to squash private landlords. It'll be nothing but a disaster
That's
for
correct.
tenants. I mean, rent's already sky high in the
That's
city.
correct.
It says Mandati's housing ideas
Ideas chief.
who you just mentioned, openly promotes imposing low rents and high taxes to squeeze owners into foreclosure so that the city can grab their properties from
So
them.
everyone knows
The
this.
aim is legalize theft, but after all, confiscating private property is a pillar of socialism.
Right, because private property does something that socialism is supposed to do, and socialism can't have any competitors. They don't want to compete with a free market that's going to beat them. So they need to get rid of that free market. They need to eliminate private ownership, because if you have private ownership, you have somebody who can earn a profit and who can enrich themselves while saving other people money. And all of this happens away from the government. Nobody's thanking the government for doing this. Nobody is beholden to a socialist system for providing for them. People don't have to come to the government and ask for anything. And to a socialist, that's rebellion. To a socialist, that is revolt. You can't have that happening if you're going to have the government in control of everything. That is totally unacceptable. And that's why the point here is to completely bankrupt everybody who is a threat to the new regime, if you want to call it that. Because this regime cannot have anyone in opposition to it. No competing power structure at all will be allowed to stand. And here's where this is going to lead. If you take half the apartments in New York and you put those landlords out of business and the city takes over those buildings, where are they going to get the money to run them? They're going to need to get it from the other half, aren't they? And what that means is every tax imaginable is going to go up once this starts happening, because as the city gets more and more buildings under its umbrella of things that it needs to improve, it's going to need more and more money to operate those things. And where's it going to get? It's going to have to come from the money that's left over. So this thing is going to snowball. It's going to be a massive roller coaster, and it's going to happen faster than anyone expects.
Is flabbergasting. This is a flashback to a 2021 podcast with C. Weaver saying
Oh, the
the
ideas
goal is to
chief.
make housing worthless. Listen to this.
Housing worthless.
So rent control, and they need to be rent controlled. And the reason why they need to be rent controlled is not because like rent control is inherently socialist, but because rent control limits the speculative value of the land. Like our goal is to have the housing actually be worthless.
Oh, so their goal is to make housing worthless. Why do they want it to be worthless?
Some degree, right? Like we don't want this to be an investment vehicle. We want it to be like long-term stable homes. We don't need people to become millionaires off their homes.
So they don't want you to become a millionaire off your home. They want this to be a long-term stable investment. But here's the problem. In New York City, the average home price is several $100,000. It's hard to buy a moderate home in this city for less than $700,000, so to speak. So they don't want you to get any appreciation. They want you to pay for the place and live there, and that's it. And the problem with that is something can't be a long-term stable investment if the profit on that investment is at all limited or is at all regulated and can max out. If that happens, investors are going to look at that and say, I don't want to do that. And look, home ownership isn't about somebody getting rich. But if the possibility to get rich isn't there, you're going to dissuade people from doing it. This is like the best workout advice I ever got back when I used to go to a gym. Somebody at the gym who was in great shape told me, they said, hey, you should try to get jacked because you probably won't. Most people won't. But if you don't try, your results will be worse than if you tried and didn't succeed. This is the same thing. People have to be able to go into something with the hope that it can materialize. But here's why that's not going to be allowed to happen.
This is a communist move. We cannot allow this to happen. My tweet went absolutely nuts, viral. And the reason is because I've been calling her out since January when he appointed her. And she had everything to say about white ownership, if you remember, and stuff like this. But let me say that this is a violation of the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. Okay? They're not allowed to do this. And the only way we're going to be able to stop them is with a lawsuit. Now,
this goes back to what I've been saying. It's about the Enlightenment. It's property rights. Our constitutional republic is based on property rights. And that's why our constitutional republic is antithetical to socialism and communism. We are built on the idea of capitalism. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great supplements that I offer and help support capitalism. Get the vitamin D3. This vitamin D3 is dual purpose. What does it do? It helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis if they're infected. Super important during the cold season. Vitamin D3 also helps to build denser bone because it helps to absorb calcium. Vitamin D3 is very important for cardiovascular health, to reduce plaque formation. And vitamin D3 is a gene expression cofactor, so your genes are expressed properly. So please go to my store and get the vitamin D3. Now, this stack that I'm going to tell you is super important to slow down the aging process. You can take them separately, but there's synergistic benefits of stacking this. Turmeric brings down inflammation, soaks up free radicals. Ashwagandha root controls your cortisol levels and helps you to control your blood glucose levels. Lignans soaks up free radicals, brings down inflammation, helps the immune system and the cardiovascular system. Now, you stack these together. It does wonders. It's keeping inflammation down. You're boosting up your immune system. You're helping your endocrine system. And by bringing down that inflammation, you're helping brain function. You're helping that cardiovascular system and even your joint health. You'll be able to recover quicker after a workout. And taking this stack daily, you will notice that you're slowing down the aging process. And it's the third pillar of the protocol. So please go to my store and get the turmeric, the ashwagandha lignans. You can take them separately, but they stack really well. There's synergistic benefits to stacking. Now, the first pillar of the protocol, simple. Cleanse, which is 30 parts per million, or max 35 parts per million, or max 14 parts per million. They're at different price points. Pick whichever one you want. Take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, about 20 seconds, 30-second gargle, and swallow it. What this will do is improve the health of your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, maintain a mucosal barrier, help the health of your epithelial cells, and boost up your innate immune system. It's really simple. And if you're sick because of the cold season or whatever, take a tablespoon or two until you're healthier, and then you go back to your maintenance dose of a teaspoon. I've been doing this protocol for over 6 years, every day. Every day. Teaspoon, every day. If you're not feeling well because of the cold season, or someone around you's not feeling well, take a tablespoon. It's really simple. Every day. And what this will do is help to neutralize and maintain that health of the epithelial cells. Super important, especially for the oral pharynx. Let's go back to socialism. I'll tell you, New York, if New York doesn't wake up, it's going to go down into the abyss, very similar to the 1970s.
Got a capable city council, which we do not, okay? They could stop this right now. As soon as it hits the floor, this law should not be passing. But they reintroduced it, as known as COPA, they renamed it. And let's also go over something else. We have city-owned properties called NYCHA. They are the worst landlords that the city could ever ask for.
Right, and they have over 6,000 empty apartments right now in these city-run properties that New York is already in charge of and is already failing. So we've got the case study right here. Is New York City up to the task of entering the real estate market and making it better? Obviously not. But the goal here isn't to shy away from that. The goal here is to double down on that failure and to expand that failure and to just get rid of all opposition to it. And the thought of these communists, the dream, if you want to call it that, is that if we could only raise taxes fast enough and raise them high enough, we would have enough money to fix all of the things that we need money to fix. That's their goal. And of course, the mayor knows there's going to be lawsuits. Of course, there's going to be opposition to this. Of course, property owners are going to come after this and are going to sue. But if they're already losing money, if they're already going out of business, how much time do they have? How many properties is the city going to absorb while the owners walk away because they're just totally destitute before this even meets a court that will overturn it? And depending on how long all this takes, is that even going to happen? Let me know. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.
Meet Apollo's AI assistant, the first GTM AI that actually works. From simple ask,
repricing of the space industry because of SpaceX. What was the narrative before SpaceX's IPO? What is it now?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think what investors are starting to appreciate, one is you have a very flagship company within SpaceX, which hopefully sets a bar in terms of valuation, but it also draws a lot of awareness to what's going on in the sector. So, to give you an example, as people are looking at SpaceX, from our view, when we think about a name we do cover, Rocket Labs, we're starting to realize that with it, by looking at SpaceX, you're realizing how tight the launch market is right now, with the Falcon 9 relatively booked throughout 2007. So as that message gets out there from SpaceX, people can then look at Rocket Labs and see how compelling the opportunity is within launch for a name like that. We're also realizing when we look at SpaceX, just how big the Starlink service is.
All right. Iran is stating that they're halting attacks on Israel after overnight strikes. So let's listen into Fox News here.
It's a Fox News alert. Israel and Iran trading fire overnight with the most strikes we have seen in months.
But President Trump posted on Truth Social earlier this morning saying that Israel and Iran are looking to do an immediate ceasefire as, quote, final negotiations on peace are proceeding.
Chief Our correspondent Trey Yates was talking to the president. He is live in Tel Aviv with the latest. Hey, Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. It looks like these sides are listening to President Trump. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps just announced they are halting attacks against Israel, but maintain the ability to fire again if the Israelis target Hezbollah in Lebanon. This is a significant development and an indication we may be looking at an off-ramp here after a whirlwind 24 hours across the region. This all started yesterday afternoon when the IDF struck the Lebanese capital of Beirut, going after the Hezbollah neighborhood of Dahya. Immediately after, Iranian officials threatened to fire on Israel, and hours later they did just that, launching 4 waves of ballistic missiles toward the northern part of this country, sending hundreds of thousands of people into bomb shelters. The Israelis, after, decided they were going to return fire and strike Iran. But I was speaking with President Trump as these missiles were soaring through the skies of this country, getting his initial reaction, and the president told me what I would suggest to Iran: you shot your missiles, that's enough, get back to the table and make a deal. And again, the president reiterating his desire for a diplomatic solution today, calling on both Israel and Iran to stop shooting. The Israelis conducted dozens of strikes against the Iranian regime in response to that missile fire. And then early this morning, just after sunrise, sirens sounded across Israel's second largest city of Tel Aviv amid incoming Houthi ballistic missile fire launched from Yemen, an Iranian proxy there. The Iranians then followed up with more ballistic missiles against Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and the northern city of Haifa before all of this started to de-escalate amid those calls from President Trump for both sides to stop shooting. But again, the latest information that we have, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has announced they will halt their fire against Israel, and the Israelis have not struck Iran for at least 4 hours, an indication that we may be looking at a return to ceasefire. Guys?
So, Trey, Hezbollah will not sign on to a ceasefire. Iran says we're not going to sign on to a ceasefire until Israel stops hitting Hezbollah. Hezbollah's not going to stop hitting Israel. It doesn't seem like we're going to have this. It seems like America back at Iran is inevitable.
Yeah, this isn't over, and there are still around 50,000 U.S. forces across the region, and now we are looking at 2 international shipping lanes. Remember, there is an ongoing U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports that is crippling the Iranian economy, and Right now, Iranian exports are down about 90%. They're extracting crude oil at a 50% rate. This is a significant blow to the Iranian economy. And the president has indicated that blockade will stay in place. Remember, he's trying to get a deal with the Iranian regime to open the Strait of Hormuz and then ultimately disable Iran's nuclear ambitions and export or destroy the highly enriched material that remains inside of Iran in the aftermath of the U.S. strikes last summer during Operation Midnight Hammer. But there was an interesting development earlier today when the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen got involved in the fight, because not only did they launch 2 ballistic missiles toward Israel, the Houthis announced that they were closing the gateway to the Red Sea indefinitely. And it is known as Bab al-Mandab, which translates broadly to the gateway of tears. And that is what it is referred to in the region, because around 12% of the world's shipping actually passes there through the Red Sea. And so we're now looking at 2 international shipping lanes and more levers that the Iranians are trying to pull because they're backed in a corner. They don't have much leverage at the negotiating table. Much of their military was decimated during Operation Epic Fury. Their navy is resting at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. And they're trying to use what is left of their proxy groups in places like Yemen and Lebanon to put pressure on regional countries and U.S. forces across the Middle East. Right now, it appears like things are returning toward the negotiating table. But remember, President Trump holds the cards here because of that U.S. naval blockade. If the Iranians want to drag out these talks, they're the ones that are going to pay a very heavy price as it relates to their economy. And U.S. and Israeli forces remain on high alert across the region if the Iranians decide to resume missile fire toward Israel. Likely then we'd look at a scenario where higher level combat operations would resume.
So Trey, real quickly, can you speak to these young people, these college students that are now going to be protesting? Over the weekend, it was reported that Iran is going to start doing the trials again of people that they say are traitors to the government, meaning people that are just, they don't want to be executed, live life like normal people. What's going to happen to these kids out here? Are they going to be a part of that 30,000 number again that they target?
It's certainly a scary situation for Iranian civilians. And oftentimes when we talk about this story, we speak about the ballistic missile fire and the airstrikes taking place. But remember, Iran is a country of more than 90 million people. And many of those people were in the streets of their country earlier this year demonstrating against the economic conditions inside of Iran. And President Trump says 42,000 of them were slaughtered in the streets of their own country. And it wasn't just in the capital of Tehran, it was across Iran where there was this brutal crackdown from Iran's besieged forces and IRGC commanders. Now, many of those commanders and their headquarters were taken out in U.S. and Israeli strikes during Operation Epic Fury. And now that the internet is partially back on, we're starting to get more information and images out of Iranian territory. But remember, all of this is connected here, because when we look at the domestic pressure put on the Iranian regime as a result of this ongoing U.S. naval blockade, the pressure continues to rise. And as recently as about 4 months ago, the Iranians were considering moving their capital from Tehran because they couldn't get water to the civilian population. This speaks to how desperate the regime is, and that was before their military was damaged so heavily during Operation Epic Fury. And so we are looking at a very complex and multifaceted situation that involves the civilian population on the ground in Iran. You have hardliners in the IRGC that are still threatening to fire on U.S. bases across the Middle East. And then you have these more relatively moderate voices that exist in Tehran, like the parliament speaker, Mohammad Khalibaf, or the president, Masoud Pezeshkian, that understand they cannot beat the United States and Israel on the battlefield, and they will have to make concessions at the negotiating table.
Right, and they've been sidelined, those moderate voices, it seems. Trey, thanks so much.
Thank you, Trey.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox 1.
Sorry to interrupt, but this is important. The shooter who murdered my sweet little Daniel brought a highly lethal weapon.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. This is a very potent antioxidant. This antioxidant is 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. C60 will soak up free radicals, bring down inflammation in the cell, and allow for your tissue to perform better. You can get it in extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, or MCT coconut oil. Take a teaspoon a day every day, preferably on an empty stomach in the morning, and you'll notice that you're recovering quicker after a workout, inflammation's going down, your immune system and endocrine system is performing better. Your skin health will improve because it's improving the basal layer. This stacks really well with resveratrol, which I'll talk about shortly here. C60 will soak up free radicals at the vascular level to prevent plaque formation. It'll help the health of your neurons, so you have better neuroplasticity. You'll be thinking better, and you'll be getting rid of that brain fog. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. Soak up those free radicals, boost up your energy levels. It helps the health of your mitochondria. And when you have tissues and your cells have better mitochondria, your organ systems are going to perform better. And you're going to be slowing down the aging process. So please go to my store and get the C60. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. And it is cheaper per ounce to get the higher ounce configuration. Now, resveratrol, you can take separately, but you can stack it with C60. It's a very powerful stack. Resveratrol helps with youthful gene expression. It's an antioxidant, so it's going to soak up free radicals and help the health of the mitochondria and boost up your energy levels. It'll also help to get rid of cells that are in senescence. Cells that are in senescence are cells that just stop dividing and collect garbage. You want to get rid of those cells. And in tissues that can regenerate, you'll get healthier tissues, healthier cell populations by taking resveratrol. Now, resveratrol helps also the basal layer. Improving the health of that basal layer for your skin improves your skin health over time. Now, stacking these two together, very strong antioxidant with the resveratrol with youthful gene expression, over time, you're going to have better skin health. But it's holistic. You want the proper diet, proper exercise, drink filtered water, stay away from processed foods, do some cardio, some resistance training, about a little bit heavier on the resistance training than the cardio. You want about a 60-40 split. And mindfulness. Have a positive outlook on life. Learn new things. When you approach this in a holistic way and take the proper supplementation, you're going to slow down the aging process. So please, go to my store, get the resveratrol, and stack it with the C60. You can take them separately, but like I said, by stacking the supplements, you're going to improve the efficacy. Why? Because your biochemistry isn't just one path. Your biochemistry has a multitude of paths, feedback loops, positive and negative, that you want to improve on to help slow down the aging process. This is the reason why if you only take one supplement, it doesn't do much to you. But if you take a lot of different supplements because of your very complex biochemistry, you're going to be able to slow down the aging process. It's about synergistics. That's the magic of how an anti-aging protocol works. All right, so please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. Let's listen to CNN about what was going on with this strike between Israel and
Iran are engaging in a barrage of fresh strikes. It is a major test for negotiations that President Trump said just yesterday were very close to being done. So we're going to start with a new wave of Iranian missile strikes that were launched towards Israel. This is new video into CNN overnight showing damage inside a home in the West Bank. Now this follows Israeli strikes on an Iranian petrochemical plant. The IDF said that it hit several targets at that complex. Now, these retaliatory strikes appear to be in defiance of President Trump, who called Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and told him to hold off on striking back. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson said Monday that the U.S., quote, bears responsibility for Israel's actions, going on to say, quote, whatever happens in the region, the direct responsibility of the United States is established, and it will also bear responsibility for the consequences of any escalation. Now, just now on Truth Social, President Trump, just in the last 30 minutes, writing, quote, Israel and Iran must immediately stop shooting. We've got live team coverage throughout the region. We're going to start in Jerusalem with CNN's Oren Lieberman. Oren, can you give us the latest on these strikes so far this morning?
Audie, we just got a briefing a short time ago from an Israeli military official who said that Israel is preparing for the possibility of several days of fighting, and beyond that, the potential for this to become a more prolonged conflict. And that's important because it gives you a sense of what Israel is preparing for. Meanwhile, Tehran has also said they're prepared for a week of conflict. So both Israel and Iran are clearly signaling right now that they're in this for the long haul, if that's what this turns into. If it turns into a few days or more of fighting, then they are prepared for that. In fact, it seems the one person who isn't prepared for that is President Donald Trump, who is trying to force through his social media a de-escalation on both sides in that post on Truth Social that you pointed out. That Israeli military official says that since the start of this, which was only about 13 or 14 hours ago or so, Iran has launched some 30 ballistic missiles at Israel in several barrages. Meanwhile, Israel has carried out its own set of strikes on Iran, targeting surface-to-air missiles, as well as that petrochemical facility that you pointed out. That's key because that may mean that energy infrastructure is fair game for Iran. We should keep an eye on the Gulf region to see if Iran carries out strikes on energy infrastructure there. That would, of course, send oil markets and the energy part of this into turmoil as well, or at least has the potential to do so. So that's a very key element to keep an eye on here. Meanwhile, the Houthis in Yemen have also launched at least 2 missiles at Israel. So right now, it seems like we are climbing the escalation ladder potentially quickly, even as Trump tries to impose a ceasefire here. He has done it on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu before when it comes to Gaza and Lebanon and even previous conflicts with Iran, and it seems like he's trying to do so once again.
CNN's Fred Pleiken is in Tehran. We should note CNN operates in Iran only with the permission of the government, but maintains full editorial control of its reports. Here's Fred's report.
On our rooftop position here overlooking Iran's capital, Tehran, we have been able to hear a couple of very loud thuds that could be explosions, and then also some smaller ones in pretty close succession that might have been anti-aircraft fire. Now, that's not confirmed. It's not exactly clear what that is. However, we do know that the Israelis say that they have been striking targets, as they put it, in Iran's capital, Tehran, but also in other Iranian cities, like, for instance, Isfahan and Tabriz. That's also confirmed by the Iranians, and the Iranians also say, and the Israelis also confirm that Israel has hit a petrochemical facility in the south of Iran. It's very close to the Iraqi border, very close to the city of Basra. The Iranians are saying that the staff of that petrochemical facility has been ordered to evacuate that facility. And the Iranians are also saying that they are hitting back in a major way. They say in retaliation for the attack on that petrochemical facility that they launched ballistic missiles towards a similar facility, they put it, in the Israeli city of Haifa. The Iranians also earlier saying that there had been a wave of Iranian ballistic missile attacks targeting 2 Israeli air bases and specifically radar installations affiliated with those air bases. The Iranians are saying right now their missile forces and generally their forces are in a state of complete readiness, and they are also warning the Israelis to stop their military action. Of course, all of this coming as the ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran continues to very much hang in the balance. Iran and the U.S. saying that they are trying to work towards a memorandum of understanding to end the conflict between Iran and the United States, but also to then move towards broader peace talks aimed at achieving a larger peace agreement. The Iranians are saying those talks are in a difficult state. They want some of their frozen assets to be unfrozen immediately. And both sides are acknowledging, of course, right now that especially with these attacks going on, it certainly seems as though that ceasefire and the general situation right now, very volatile. For Pleiken, CNN, Tehran.
Well, joining us to talk more about the military strategy here is retired Air Force Colonel and CNN military analyst Cedric Leighton. Good morning. So first I want to talk about this escalation because people may be hearing about the back and forth between Israel and Hezbollah for many weeks. Why did this particular round of strikes kick off?
Yeah, good morning, Audie. The reason this particular round of strikes kicked off was because the Israelis hit the suburb, the Beirut suburb of Dagya. That's where Hezbollah has its main headquarters, and there are a lot of Hezbollah personnel, for lack of a better term, in the Dagya neighborhood. So the reason the Iranians basically came to the defense of the Hezbollah entities there was because Hezbollah is basically Iran's main proxy in the region, and they need Hezbollah in order not only to keep an eye on Israel, but also to potentially mount attacks on Israel. So every time that there is destruction to Hezbollah, Iran sees this as not only destruction of Hezbollah, but also of their own forces, even though they are absolutely separate. So this is, in essence, what's going on. They decided, the Iranians decided, that it was a time to respond to the Israeli attacks, and especially one as blatant as the one on Dahya, in their view. And the reason they did that is because they want the ceasefire to cover not just Iran, but also the Lebanese territory where the Israelis have conducted repeated actions against Hezbollah.
You talked about proxies, and then this also brings me to also the Houthis in Yemen, because there's some reporting there that they were saying they wanted to prevent shipping through the Red Sea, which sounds very familiar to those of us who have been hearing about Iran preventing shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Does this threaten broader conflict? Are we seeing hints of that?
Yeah, there's definitely the possibility that this could widen into a bigger regional conflict, at least. So on the eastern side of the Arabian Peninsula, you have the Strait of Hormuz, which is the area that we've been talking about for quite some time. And then on the western side, you have what's known as the Bab al-Mandeb, and that is that very narrow point between the Red Sea as it empties out into the Indian Ocean. So this is an area where these are so-called choke points, and every time those are cut off, that impacts global shipping, global trade, and it means that prices go up, oil becomes scarcer, and that creates the economic issues that we're seeing in a lot of the world right now.
We hear President Trump framing the U.S. involvement more as precaution, not escalation. I want to play for you something that happened on NBC's Meet the Press. This was before all of this news about this escalation, but here it is.
If you're not specifically calling it a war, would you consider sending some of the troops who are stationed there, who were sent because of Operation Epic Fury there home? No, would you consider sending them home if it's not technically a war?
We don't need as many troops. I think it's just like it's on the err on the side of caution.
What are we looking at? Is it a kind of carrot and stick, meaning the U.S. is doing the negotiating, but Israel is leaning hard on the military pressure?
Well, potentially. So, it's interesting when you look at President Trump's remarks. They, on the one hand, he's kind of hedging his bets here. He does admit to the possibility of withdrawing some of the troops that are in the Middle East. And I think what he's referring to are the troops that came in addition to the ones that were already stationed in the Middle East. So what he doesn't want to do is withdraw completely from the region, which is actually Iran's goal. So if you withdrew completely from the region, that would satisfy Iran, but it wouldn't protect the Arab Gulf states like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain. So that becomes a critical point right here. He, in essence, really can't withdraw if he doesn't want to show weakness, and that becomes, I think, the critical point right here.
One more thing. We know that these strikes started back earlier in the year. They were U.S.-Israeli joint strikes. The U.S. gives a lot of military support, intelligence support to Israel. So could what we're seeing right now even happen without U.S. support?
It could, and the reason I think we see limited strikes in the western and central parts of Iran, at least so far, is because the Israelis do have a capability to conduct those strikes on their own. They have their own refueling capability, although it's somewhat limited compared to what the U.S. can offer. Generally speaking, if the strikes were much more extensive or repeated over a series of days, then that would probably indicate a greater U.S. involvement. There may be some U.S. involvement, but it is absolutely possible that these strikes are occurring without direct U.S. involvement at the moment.
Okay, that's Colonel Cedric Layton. Thank you for your insight. Appreciate you.
All right, we're going to go to Al Jazeera, but before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the omega-3. This will help with cardiovascular health, really important. It helps to bring down systemic inflammation and help to control your lipid profile. It helps to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. And when you do that, less inflammation, less concentrations of LDL, that means less plaque formation. With less plaque formation, you have a better cardiovascular system, you have better blood flow, better perfusion of blood to your brain and your other organ systems, and therefore you are healthier. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the omega-3, super important. Now, I have drops and lozenges in stock. They're perfect for the allergy season, the cold season, even when you're working in the yard or cleaning the house. Take these, they will neutralize. They're made from structural nanosilver. You can get the cherry flavored structural nanosilver drops, and you can also get Manuka honey lozenges and orange splash fortified with vitamin C lozenges. And again, if you're cleaning the house, work in the yard, take them prophylactically to prevent an allergy. If you have some sort of throat irritation, take them right away to help mitigate. So please go to my store, get the structural nanosilver lozenges and drops. Like I said, if you attack it right away, you'll be able to mitigate the problem. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5. Save some money. All right, let's listen to Al Jazeera here.
Respectfully, the madman sort of strategy, if you will, of attacking Iran and saying nothing but a complete surrender. There is no complete surrender. Iranian nuclear program is not destroyed. Iranian missiles still intact. So what exactly has he accomplished? What has Netanyahu accomplished in that sense, in the strict sense of the declared objectives? So now he is stuck and he's going to be blaming Netanyahu. And Netanyahu is basically acting, according to some, like a rabid dog. I mean, he just wants to bomb, he wants to scream. And by the way, that little thing that you started with Netanyahu, I'm not sure our viewers around the world heard what Netanyahu just said. He actually said that if we didn't attack Iran, meaning on February 28th, there would have been no Israel no more. I mean, imagine the escalatory, the populist way in which Netanyahu is deceiving his own people and deceiving the world about a war of choice against Iran. And that is not to the liking of Trump at this point.
Marwan Bashar, Al Jazeera senior political analyst, joining us from London. Thank you. A worsening Ebola outbreak in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo's.
Let's listen into. I want to listen into CNBC talking about this Kevin Warsh.
Whoa. What's that? I just built a budgeting app in Base 44. Guys, Nina just built an app.
Impossible. You're not kidding.
A strong jobs report presenting an early challenge to the Fed. And new chair Kevin Warsh, senior economics reporter Steve Leisman has the details. Hey, Steve.
Hey, good morning, Joe. This is really interesting. The recent surge in job growth raising the chance of Fed rate hikes as it shapes up some of the ideas we've had about the economy at the Fed and presents an early test of some of the new ideas of Fed Chair Kevin Warsh. Among the challenges created by those strong job numbers, what is the break-even employment rate believed to be between 0 and 50,000? What could it be now with a 3-month average job growth of 109,000 and no change in the unemployment rate? What's the neutral rate? Hard to believe this rate currently is restricted with such strong job growth. And is there now concern about jobs and wages raising the inflation risk? Cleveland Fed President Beth Haddock saying on Friday, if recent trends continue, it may soon be appropriate to act. And in that sense, it suggested acting being raising rates. So the probability of the rate like this year at 70% this morning for December, up from 44% before the Friday report.
Inflation is, because of the oil issue, inflation's going up. But the Fed raising rates in an oil issue would be problematic and make things worse. Most likely, the Federal Reserve is not going to cut rates. They're going to stay at steady until the inflation starts to come down. But Trump is running out of runway in terms of trying to control the price of oil. And if it gets escape velocity, guess what? He's not going to be able to rein it in. And we're going to have more inflation. Trump thought he was so smart in trying to negotiate with the Iranians instead of kicking ass. And this is the problem that we have now. Right now, the oil is trading at $91.39 a barrel for WTI. And natural gas is trading at 3.1.
It moved past Wall Street expectations for job growth of 172,000 in May and big upper divisions in the 2 prior months. And hold on, because there's even now a 52% chance of a second hike. That would be a year from now, while everyone from the president to his top economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, are agreeing strong job growth is no reason to hike rates. The data also is.
It's possible that the Federal Reserve raises rates next year. That's very possible. But right now, this year, I don't think that they're going to raise rates. But I don't think that they're going to lower rates anytime soon.
Here's a Fed chair, Kevin Warsh. He's criticized this notion that strong job growth creates inflation. He said in recent Senate testimony, here's what he said.
My view of inflation is a bit different from some. I don't think inflation comes about when the economy grows too much or hardworking Americans get increased in their wages.
Rather, Warsh contends inflation is a function of Fed policy being too loose and the government spending too much money. His colleagues on the Fed, they don't disagree with that, but they add that an overheating economy, one running above potential, is also a source of inflation relative to where Fed policy is set, Joe.
Yeah, that's it. There may be an opportunity to test all this stuff, Steve, about a hot economy doesn't necessarily mean that it's inflationary. It's hard to do during a war, though, isn't it? Because other things are inflationary. Is it possible that we could have a lot of productivity and let things run hot if the war were over?
Yeah, but also, Joe, we talked about this, that the higher productivity also raises the neutral rate. That's another aspect. It really is an important question for the market, Joe, why rates are running higher. They're running higher because the economy is hot, because we have strong growth, or is it because of inflation? That's a separate reason. You can get there both ways, but it's really important how and why you get there. And you can have this strong productivity, you can raise the neutral rate, have higher rates, and the market will still do well. But obviously the market didn't like what it saw and the implications of it on Friday. I guess today it's a little more chill with it.
In that same question, it's a global phenomenon too, the higher rate, but is that from oil? I don't or is there even something else that we all share that's causing it around the world?
It's being able to finance the debt.
Joe, that's what we all share. We all have a blank ton of it. And I'm not going to say that. I don't know what the rules are in cable so well, but there's an awful lot of debt out there. And then when you think about what happens when rates rise, the ability to service that debt becomes much more expensive. So it's kind of like a vicious circle. Now, for the U.S., we'll always be able to service our debt, I suspect. But for other countries, maybe less so. So as rates go up, it gets harder to service. And look, supply is always an issue somewhere in the equation, usually a little bit less in the United States, but eventually we're going to have to start thinking about that in a big way.
Is globalization kind of splintering? Does that have any impact on rates around the globe?
I think that's a good question, Becky. We know what's happening on the good side, right? That globalization is really a deglobalizing world where countries, the United States and others, are trying to make sure they have certain supplies domestically. So that's changing. And if that changes and you work up from goods, well, that means financial flows are probably lessening on the global scale. And so there would be less connectivity and more sort of you're on your own in these aspects. But Joe's point's an important one, that the higher rates we've seen is a global phenomenon, and the extent to which the financial markets are deglobalized, I think it's only modestly at this point, especially when you have a big commodity like oil and higher prices ricocheting through the world and having inflationary effects. But over time, Becky, I think if we go on this route we're going on, there is going to be more deglobalization in financial markets, but I think we're a ways away from that yet.
Democrat Michael Lasher worked with Governor.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver toothpaste. This will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, and help bring down inflammation at the gum line, improve the health of your gum line, and neutralize, because it has structural nano silver. It has no fluoride, because fluoride makes you stupid. All right? Now, this structural nano silver toothpaste, it's the best on the market. You can't get a better toothpaste. Use it every day, and it'll help to neutralize, especially during the cold season. Make sure you have this in your home. Use it every day. It's a very high quality toothpaste. And I also have structural nano silver gel. Now, it's dual purpose. You can get it in the tube form or in the quick dispenser called Renew. Very high quality gels, dual purpose. You use it as a daily skincare. You can put it on at night, and you'll notice if you do this regularly that your skin will improve. You can put it on a wound to help to heal it quicker, like a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn. It'll speed the healing process about a third of the time. And allergy seasons, lightly coat your nostrils if you're outside, and it'll help to reduce your allergic reaction. In addition, if you're not feeling well because of the cold season, or someone around you is not feeling well, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your ears, around your nose, lightly coat your nostrils. It stays active for 5.5 hours. It's dual purpose. Make sure you have some at home and at work. You never know when you need it. Get the structural nano silver gels. Make sure you use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, and you get $5 off any order. You can use that discount as many times as you want. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. If you spend $100 or more, you do get a free gift until supplies last. Now let's listen into the biggest national security issue. The president's retired 4-star general says. This is on MS Now.
Let's start in the region this hour with MS Now contributor Inzamam Rashid in Dubai. Also with us, our White House reporter Jake Traylor, and MS Now military analyst, retired 4-star General Barry McCaffrey. Inzamam, tell us about these latest strikes. Did Iran hit any of its targets in Israel, and where did Israel attack inside Iran?
Well, I think what you said at the very top there, Hannah, that this is the biggest escalation since the US, Iran, and Israel agreed that ceasefire back on the 8th or 9th of April. This certainly is the biggest escalation since then, because now we are in a situation where the Israelis and the Iranians could carry out attacks against each other whenever they feel like it, because over the last 24 hours or so, what we've seen between Israel and Iran has raised a lot of eyebrows. Not just in this region, but clearly over to President Trump as well, into the White House and around the world as well. There's been a lot of condemnation, a lot of calls for de-escalation and restraint from many world leaders. Look, we're in a situation where, how have we got here? Well, as you mentioned, yesterday we saw the Israeli attacks into southern Beirut. That's been a red line for the Iranians. The IRGC then attacked as a result of that strike in Beirut. They targeted Israel with 4 rounds of ballistic missiles. And then, despite President Trump's request to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not to retaliate, we then saw an Israeli retaliation. Now, the IDF claimed that they struck military sites inside of Iran. The Air Force as well, claiming that they struck a petrochemical complex in southwestern Iran, and there has been some imagery released showcasing that there has been fire coming out of what looks like a petroleum site in that area of Iran. Now, the Iranian attacks, the IDF are saying that their Iron Dome system has kicked in, and they've managed to intercept nearly all of those Iranian ballistic missiles that were fired into Israel. We're now into a situation in the region where Iran has supposedly ended its attacks. That's what they've said, and unofficially, the Israelis have said that now as well. But what they have said, the Iranians, they've said that any further aggression and hostile acts, including in southern Lebanon, then much more severe and crushing measures than before will follow.
General McCaffrey, are you surprised Iran announced the end of this wave of attacks? What did they accomplish with this?
Well, look, objectively, Iran.
Charles Tyrrell, made for summer. Casual shirts for laid-back weekends. Breezy linen shirts built for the heat. Smart shirts that mean business.
Well, look, objectively, Iran is in a terrible situation, both economically, it's a basket case. The blockade has stopped their oil and deliveries to China. Their conventional forces have been degraded massively. The nuclear program has been set back significantly. Their own population despises their leadership. But having said that, the IRGC is now in control. They believe, I think correctly, they have the strategic advantage over the United States in the Gulf, notwithstanding the U.S. Navy's massive blockade of both southern Iran and also the Straits of Hormuz. So I think that Iran believes they're going to be able to outweigh Mr. Trump and force him to capitulate significantly, leaving them with partial control over the Straits and probably not delivering their nuclear weapons program capability to outside control. I think in the interim, what we're seeing is Iran can place Israel at risk somewhat and can place the Gulf Coast states at enormous risk, to include Saudi Arabia. So that's the tool that they're using.
Yeah, and we are now seeing the relationship between the U.S. and Israel under renewed scrutiny, Jake, with Trump saying he had called Netanyahu and told him not to strike back at Iran. And then in a separate interview, he said, quote, I call all the shots. He doesn't call the shots. And then we saw Israel strike Iran. So what happened on that call? And what's the White House posture today?
Yeah, the president's saying that is really stark because he's saying he called all the shots while hours later, literally, Netanyahu called shots against Iran. I was on the phone with the White House official yesterday during the call as it was actively happening between President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And that official told me the goal going into this call was to get Israel to not retaliate in any way whatsoever, to diffuse the situation, to calm things down. And then as we saw hours later, that wasn't the case. I also have just new reporting just moments ago, speaking with the White House official who told me that there was another call between Trump and Netanyahu earlier this morning, and they didn't yet divulge the contents of that call, but likely it is situated around continuing to diffuse what took place yesterday, as Insamam noted there, essentially the highest escalation we've seen since the shaky ceasefire in April. The president, multiple times in that interview with Chris Mulcahy yesterday of NBC, saying that he has the upper hand, that Iran wants to make a deal. But then when pressed and asked, okay, then why haven't they tried to make a deal? Why is there not a deal on the table? The president's struggling for answers there. And so this is a real power brokerage sort of moment where the president is projecting that he is calling the shots, but in real time, we're also seeing Netanyahu behave the way that he wants to.
General, is it normal for the allied leaders in a joint war to be this public about not seeing eye to eye the way Trump and Netanyahu have been in recent weeks?
No. And, I've been a part of international arms control negotiations with the Russians and other nations, State Department led. I was part of the team at the JCS. I cannot imagine what the State Department and the senior leadership of the U.S. Armed Forces are thinking, given Mr. Trump's public attacks, both on Israel, humiliating Netanyahu and probably forcing him to respond to the Iranian attacks, and also attacking the Iranian senior leadership. He's come a long way from unconditional surrender, and I will help select the next Iranian leader, but he's still publicly stepping on his negotiators. You can't threaten people, humiliate them in public, and then privately ask them for concessions. So one of the biggest problems, I think, right now in national security is the President of the United States.
So frankly, Inzamam, is the ceasefire over, and are there any peace negotiations continuing?
Look, you've got to look back at how we've got to this point, Anna, and remember all this tit-for-tat fighting that we've seen between the US and Iran over the last couple of weeks, particularly around the Strait of Hormuz, with the US targeting military sites in southern Iran on the coastal south side of Iran, and then the Iranian retaliation into Kuwait and Bahrain. Remember, Iran hit Kuwait International Airport, killing some people there and injuring dozens and dozens more, also hitting targets inside Bahrain as well. And this is important because whilst that tit-for-tat fighting was taking place, we didn't see an all-out escalation from this conflict, but yes, it's built up to this moment. And also, we didn't actually see a complete end of discussions for negotiations. I think it slowed down considerably, but I do still think that dialogue has remained open and diplomacy has been taking place faintly in the background. The big question is now, as a result of this escalation between Israel and Iran, what does that do to peace negotiations? And last night, an Iranian official who's linked to the negotiations had sent me a message in which he basically said that a deal with President Trump is no longer feasible at this stage. And this official had blamed the president for the current situation inside of Lebanon and the current escalation. Now, last night, after the fighting began between Israel and Iran, the Iranian foreign minister had a rally around of phone calls with different world leaders and counterparts across the Gulf nations. Yesterday, President Trump had specifically said that a deal could be just days away, even by Wednesday, but it clearly looks very unlikely that the two sides are in a position to get a deal over the line, whilst this fighting is very much continuing, Anna.
Jake, officials are telling you the president fundamentally miscalculated. What more are you learning about the view from inside the White House as it relates to negotiations?
Yeah, that's the quote, on fundamentally miscalculating in this situation, according to that one White House official who was describing essentially that when President Trump went into this war with Iran, there was an understanding that things may look as they have in previous wars before. They said that multiple times now internally inside the White House, there have been moments where the president, as well as his top White House aides, have come to grapple with the fact that Iran is not behaving in a normal way. They describe it as erratic behavior, unpredictable behavior. And in moments like this, despite the United States in large parts wiping out significantly portions of Iran's military, still they are willing to continue. And obviously we saw that as they resumed conflict with Israel yesterday. The White House official continued on by saying the real struggle now for President Trump is finding any sort of an off-ramp, because the president needs to, whenever there's finally a piece of reach, be able to point to something and say, this looks different. We've reached some level of success because of the war. Ideally, that's enriched uranium and fully removing that from Iran. But that's something that it seems right now is a massive sticking point that Iran has refused to capitulate on so far.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Super Strong Relief. This will help to relieve pain within 90 seconds or so. It's a topical. You put it on the joint pain that you may have because of arthritis or a sports injury, a bruise, a sprain, pulled muscle, even a tension headache. It works very quickly. It's for temporary relief. Please go to my store and get the Super Strong Relief. In addition, I also have collagen. Collagen will help with your skin, improve the health of your hair and your nails, but also your musculature, your bones, and your joints. So take it every day. This is a month supply. You can mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even milk. Some people even add it into coffee, but this is a very high quality collagen with a typical amino acid profile shown on the screen here. Take it every day, and this will help to improve even your joints. So if you have a sports injury or arthritis, this will give you the ingredients you need to help remodel that joint. Now, how do you remodel the joint? It's really simple. If you have an elbow issue or let's say a shoulder issue, you want to open up the shoulder up to a certain level where you have the pain and then go a little bit more, maybe a few degrees more, and then count to 20 seconds. And then release, wait a little bit, and do that 2 or 3 times. And do that every day. And what you will notice is you'll be able to slowly open up and articulate the joint with more degrees of freedom, more angle of freedom without pain. And if you take the collagen, you're going to have the ingredients to be able to help to remodel that cartilage and cushioning of the joint. Now, I have another product that will help to speed this up, right? And it's synergistic with the collagen. It's called collagen. And you can take them separately, but if you want to remodel the joints, this is the best way to do it. Get the collagen and the collagen. Now, collagen, what it does is it helps to stop some of the pain. It inhibits a pain gatekeeper called NAV 1.7. It also inhibits, collagen inhibits EP4, which reduces inflammation, right? So you're reducing the inflammation. It also inhibits 2 enzymes that erode the joint called MMP3 and MMP13. In addition to collagen, it helps to recruit the ingredients that you need to rebuild the cartilage and the cushioning. It helps to recruit and use collagen type 2 and also glucosamine. In addition, chondroitin and acan are recruited to help to cushion the joint. So you do these exercises that I just mentioned, so you, over time, now it may take months, sometimes it takes a year, but you'll eventually get more articulation. The faster you start with this protocol, the faster it'll take to heal the joint problem. Now this is for arthritis and sports injury. Now, collagen you take every day, and take the collagen, and to help to reduce the pain temporarily, take the super strong relief. So it's a great stack here. The collagen, and the super strong relief. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now, that's the broadcast that I have for today. Just to recap, the S&P 500 is at 7,434 with the VIX at 18, and oil is trading at 91.44 for WTI. I still have a target year end for the S&P 500 at 7,800. I may push that up to 8,000. I haven't yet. But 7,800 is my target for year end for the S&P 500. And I suspect that there's going to be a spike that's above 20 for VIX, closer to 25, that's coming soon. Now, I'm a little surprised it didn't happen today because of the news that happened last night between Iran shooting missiles and then Israel shooting back at Iran. So I'm a little surprised that VIX didn't spike today in the morning session above 20. Thank you for listening. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the supplements to help slow down the aging process and you get healthy. If you take my advice, you're going to be able to make some money in the market and you're going to be able to slow down the aging process and get healthy. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.